Hello everyone, nice to see you, all of you here. Yeah, I know many of you personally, so hello to everyone I don't know personally yet. Yeah, my talk will be about reporting after a few seconds. Yeah, I'm a Ruby developer for a pretty long time. I'm about 8 years in software industry overall, and 5 of them I've spent with the Ruby and Rails, and 3 of them I've spent in a company called Talkable. I'm working there right now, and one of the things we do there is reporting, and a lot of them. Yeah, because we are kind of software that we do really small features, but we analyze really deeply what we just did, like marketing campaigns and so on. It's just one screen, but every single step there is analyzed by many people. Thank you. It's just right.
Clicker is not working. Sorry, I don't know why.
You have to focus the window. You have to focus the window
It's there.
with the pointer. So, focusing and see?
Thank you.
Yeah, I've already said that. So here's how reports could look like. Most of them look like tables, because graphs are kind of for people who are not really serious about reports. They want to see graphs instead of plain numbers, but plain numbers are really for true analytics who wants to get in depth into that. So try to be more focused on actual numbers rather than graphs. And so reports. So why do all of us do reporting? So the main reason is that at some point you actually know every single activity in your application, right? You can calculate, like, here's like 1,000 records that is added to my project each week, and I can know exactly what had happened, every single record. It's not a problem. But when it gets larger, so you cannot do it anymore. You want stuff to be shown to you in aggregated way. You cannot just track every single user, what he does, and so on. But this is a really romantic period when you can just know everything. So, and where's the need of modularity and architecture? So the need of that actually comes from not from the problem like how many reports do I have or how many data do I have. It's how many people want to use reports. Because when this stuff is growing, then your software will become more complicated. And we started to experience real problems when this number was around 5. So when there was only one person who wants reports, it's not a big deal. But when it's 5 different people who want to see the data in slightly different way, but it's kind of big deal for them, you have to think about architecture. So the plan of the talk is to at first explain some basic operations, then understand the growth problem, how things are getting complicated when there are many people that want reports, and understand what's even a metric, how metric can be filtered by different criteria, and then build the data model and show some live examples. So people language. So all reports starts from people intention to know more than they know already, and they are actually sometimes they ask really weird things like this too. But you have to force people to be more formal and say like, I need to know the total amount of or total sum of something in some context, in some date range, in some period. And when their language become more professional, it will be slightly easier to map that to real aggregation functions, like count, sum, group by, and where is 4 operations that cover 99% of all reporting. So, no image here. Okay, I'll explain. So, how does it start? It's better to just do everything manually at the beginning. You receive many different requests from people, and you compile them into real tables, even without writing any production code. You just write scripts that pull data and represent it in the most beneficial way for a particular person. And it works great at some point, because you learn SQL, you learn CSV, you learn many kind of utility tools to make your job easier, right? But at some point, I want the machine to do work, because I feel myself already like a reporting machine. I know every single piece I should connect, so why it cannot be done automatically? And here comes the requirement of unification and code reuse. And here's a real example. Suppose we have 3 different developers that were given at different tasks. So first developer was asked to like summarize total sales for each marketing campaign we have. Simple query, it's done. Second developer was asked to actually aggregate this, find the same total sales but aggregated by month, like February, March, etc., etc. But second developer was a little smarter than first one. He also put the successfully delivered scope there, because he knew that total sales supposed to include only sales that were successfully delivered, not just returned back, right? And third developer was even smarter, and he was given a slightly different task, as always, to aggregate stuff, not just by marketing campaign, but also by months. But he was smarter because he used not created at, but paid at, because we should count sale when it was paid, but not when it was created. So there are like 3 things. All of them say that this is total sales, aggregated slightly differently, but they are all different numbers, and they will not sum up. So looking from that to the other hand, if you see such a graph in your application, many people would ask you from the sales, like, does it include return sales or not? And the only one way to know for you is just look into the code. In this particular implementation, does it include return sales or not? And the problem is that same metric can be calculated differently across the project. And even all those examples, they all never cover daylight saving time. So all those 3 developers didn't even know that there is like daylight saving time, and database doesn't deal with it pretty good, because there are many different time zones and all of them go to the daylight saving time in a different moment. And so database are really bad at that. And so the conclusion to fix it is just, okay, if I have same name in my application for something, it should have same logic behind. If it has a different logic, then I should invent a different name for it. This is the only one way. And there is no per person names, like this guy wants this thing to be like that, and that guy wants to be it like that. It should never happen. They should use different names for stuff. So there needs to be one place to define your metrics in the application that would aggregate like its internal name, like visual name, maybe some description, and the way how to calculate it. So how to calculate the metric? We want at first to reuse code, right? And also we want to support many different filters. We want to say, okay, in this month or in this marketing campaign, or only males, only females, only first-time buyers, only second-time buyers, and etc., etc. So it should be filters, and all basic operations should be supported. That's actually only count and sum, because others are combinations of these 2, like average. So how to be organized? If you want to filter all your sales by all of that parameters, this is not a lot. This is maybe 20% of what real applications can have, because purchases is like super important metric, and there may be tons of things how you qualify your purchases. So how to deal with all that stuff? And there is a word snowball that you feel at some moment, that people talk about the same things, but you cannot reuse code between those. So this is like 2 requests that ask you around the same stuff, but the code is completely different. So there's like even more possible questions you can ask about, by just using certain terms, but they will not share code without special care. So the question to the audience. So this is like 2 fragments. They aggregate data in a slightly different way. So how do you think, is it a code duplication or not? So
could you please step aside a little bit? Thank you.
So I propose to raise hands for people who think that this is the code duplication. Yeah, so almost everyone thinks that it's not. And I would agree with that with the one small addition. Not yet. So it will become like that soon. If we will add more filters, only males, only females, only in, I don't know, only first-time buyers, it will start to be around the same. Start to feel the same. So how to share code between all those requests? So the only one way we figured out is to just get rid of group by. And we wanted to be able to build a really simple API that's just give you one number, right? If I can query each individual number, then I can build them into tables. And I will not need to cross them. There will be just, okay, one API, I pull data there and they just give me one number. I want to calculate how many purchases happened in this period and within this marketing campaign and for this gender. Done. This is like 5 purchases. That's all. And so when I have this API, where I have the function total sales, I can reuse code between as many queries as I want. So first one figures out for each marketing campaign, I see how many sales I did in February. In the second example, I iterate over each week of February, and I get sales for selected marketing campaign, fixed one, right? And I share code inside total sales. So in this particular, if we will think about reports like that, so suppose we have several marketing campaigns and we want to see total sales for these marketing campaigns. There could be 2 variants of how we can do that. We can say, okay, for all of them or for each individual one. And it's a really cool way of thinking about data when you want to show overall or for each individual stuff in the period or in the enumeration of objects. So when I get a little more advanced, I would say, okay, I'm not just calculating total sales. I want to say total purchases, which is what graphs are really for beginners in the reporting industry. So the implementation. Here's how it could be done with OO design. Let's say we have application metrics that accepts filters, and I can share code using purchases scope between 3 functions: total sales, total purchases, and unique buyers. And the difference is just in the aggregation function. Count or sum or count with distance. And purchases scope is just does that code reuse job. It applies filters in the right way. It knows about successfully delivered or not. It knows about paid at instead of created at. And no one in the application will ever make it different. Because it's just easy to use, right? He will not write the new query from scratch because this one is way easier. So, and don't forget about metadata. Yeah, we want to be a little more complicated. We want to attach the metadata to each individual method. It's not a big deal in Ruby. It's so good at DSLs, everyone knows, right? So here's how the most easy way to attach metadata to a method. So advantages, we have all that flexibility, we have simple code, it's not complicated, it's like way more trivial than build the aggregation function with a group by that knows about daylight saving time. And it's consistent, we have single point of control, code is reused, and front end is decoupled. This is also very important because when I build new report in the front end, I don't care how metrics are calculated. I'm just using that simple API to do that. So consistency. This is a very important topic. So suppose we have this number of sales in March, this number of sales in April, and this number of sales in May, and then we want to calculate number of sales in spring, right? And this actually should equal to all these 3, right? And with this particular way of doing things, it will be always like that. And if you would use group by, it will be problems with daylight saving time. If you want to be really consistent, well, at some point your users will start to, especially when you show particular user the numbers he don't like, he will blame you for showing wrong numbers rather than thinking it's right. Maybe it's wrong by $1, right? But he will blame you that it's not correct because it's inconsistent. So when people are starting to get serious, they start to believe your reports. You have to be consistent up to every single cent. Because otherwise they will say, hey, this doesn't sum up. I don't believe you. There might be something wrong with it, especially when numbers are bad. Nobody likes bad numbers, right? So yeah, DST is your enemy. The database never does it correctly. So being consistent means gain trust, because otherwise people will never believe. And disadvantages of this particular way is just performance going down, right? Instead of one query that's pretty heavy, but still it's one, we have as many queries as our table has. So in order to fight that, caching may be the first idea that people might think, but it doesn't work. Because in this particular example, we have the data for 10 marketing campaigns, 3 years, 20 product categories, and maybe 10 metrics. And here's how many variants we can have. Yeah, and it can work. Caching can work for a dashboard when everyone sees the same stuff over and over again. But it will not work with the individual data for each particular user because it's just pulled once, maybe twice, like by manager and his boss, and never again. So the real way of improving performance is parallel execution, because we have many simple queries and nobody limits us to just execute them in parallel. And it's not a big deal even in Ruby, because it's not a write operation, it's a read operation. And you can easily Google for parallel map on Ruby and it will just show you the most easy way of doing that. And also remember that accurate numbers slowly are better than random numbers fast. Better to just know exactly what you want to pull. So summing up, naming consistency, same logic, same name, different logic, different name. How to reuse code? If you think it's important, then go to one number idea. One number, one query, no group by. And unified definition, there is a name, there is description, base query, maybe filters, and operation applied, count or sum or a combination of two. And remember that there is more about data than anything else. So UI is not that important in reports. How many of you does like the UI of the Google Analytics? Yeah, but we still use it a lot, and it's a pretty cool tool and can be seen as example of a reporting-oriented project. Thanks everyone for your attention. Here you can see some links about me and stuff I do. Here's a little code for questions inspiration. Thank you. What's next? Questions?
So UI is always difficult for reporting, but visualization of data is often very difficult.
So it's super cool when you can decouple, and at best there's one guy caring about UI and other guy caring about metrics. At worst, you have tasks with backend and you have tasks with front end. So you never merge working on this thing near the fact that you need to display the date range filter with the JavaScript date picker and so on. So when you think about date pickers, user interface, how the links are formed, maybe it's too long, and beauty of your interface, is better to never go to this layer. Never think that there is like something behind total sales that does work, because your brain will blow up.
Do you do any background operations like aggregation, summing data up, and then reporting?
No. we only cache associations. This is one thing. So also we use SSD hard drive. Who doesn't use it today? I don't know. This is like must-have thing. And we use parallel execution. And the reason why we don't do any caching, like background processing, is still a caching. Well, we do background processing for large exports because when you want a report for each individual day for 3 years, you can only see a bunch of it in the interface and ask to send it to you to the email with all data. So this is where we do it.
Do you have an idea of the most used queries reports so that you can cache them? I mean, it is something.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do you have the idea of the data about the most required reports by users that you can cache at least?
Well, it depends on the project, but still, well, if you're in e-commerce like us, it will be total sales, definitely, right? The leader. If you're like Facebook or any other social networks, the thing you care about is probably activities, and like more activities is cool, and the only thing you care like how many post was made, how many photos was uploaded, how many likes had happened. But at the top layer you just see activity overall, how my activity is growing. So maybe if I'm a GitHub, I would probably care about how many commits happen, how many stars happen, and such a basic metrics. But not for e-commerce, it's maybe always more than one. There's a really small amount of project when you have only one. If you're maybe showing advertising, it's just how many views and clicks, or maybe clicks and views, or maybe just clicks, or maybe just views, right?
Well, there is no way to show the non-precise data first, and then if user wants, he will click like show me the very precise value.
I don't think it's right, because, well, to gain people trust, well, they will not read your message that this data is inaccurate. They will anyway blame you because people are getting stressed in their works and they tend to blame software. So they will not read any warning that this data is not accurate. And they will not accept the trade-offs like, hey, this is imprecise data and I will deliver precise data later to you. They will not accept that trade-off.
Thanks.
For example, in Google Analytics, they can't show you the raw data. They always does. But nobody can confirm it. And it's not about sales. Because in sales, everything is very well defined. You know every single sale because it's actual box delivered to you, actual money paid. So there couldn't be impreciseness. Because every single company knows how many things they sell.
One more small question. Have you tried the cache approach, or you just, I mean, how do you define it's not cool? Because you have too many variations, so you measure it some way.
It was too obvious. We never tried because too many filters possible. You have to cache for every single day, every single metric, every single gender. Well, it's just 2, but it makes it 2 times bigger, right? Because it's exponential growth. So it's getting to the infinity very quickly. And also, we have a statistics that nothing is queried more than 2 or 3 times. Yeah. So maybe it makes sense to cache for 1 hour, right? But it's too like easy. You can even cache HTML fragment for that.
That's right.
So,
by the way, what are the sources of data?
we use only MySQL.
It's for storing, but how does data come into the database? Is it some from different sources?
We collect webhooks. Do you know what that? So it's not a streaming technology, but data arrives when it happens. It all passes, most of it passes through active records. Some of them is direct queries, but all of them are passed through HTTP. I would say HTTP requests. Sometimes we do manual import of data, but I don't think that it matters, or at least our data sources is too trivial to make us care.
Thank you.